Welcome to another episode of China Update, where I provide you with the most up-to-date political, economic, and geostrategic analysis on the world's number 2 economy. My name is Tony. Let's jump in. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Let's begin today's episode with developments in EU-China relations. Over the last few days, the Prime Minister of Italy, Meloni, met with General Secretary Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang. Italy is of strategic importance to China, as it has struck out on its own with Beijing before and could prove to be a moderating voice within the EU bloc. In 2019, Italy became the only member of the group of 7 industrialized democracies to join Xi Jinping's Belt and Road Initiative. And while Italy eventually left the infrastructure investment scheme last year, under pressure from the United States over concerns about Beijing's economic reach, Rome signaled it still desired to forge stronger ties with the PRC. After her Xi meeting, Meloni told reporters, quote, "Italy can have an important role in EU relations and creating balanced relations. We need a rules-based order as a way to guarantee stability, peace, trade that remains free." End quote. After meeting with Li Qiang, the PRC premier called for China and Italy to work together to strengthen dialogue at various levels and promote optimized and balanced bilateral trade, in an effort to, quote, "foster a more mature and stable relationship," end quote. The same day, Italy and China signed a 3-year action plan to implement past agreements and experiment with new forms of cooperation. Meloni attended a forum for PRC and Italian businesses in Beijing too, telling the business leaders in attendance that the two sides had signed an industrial cooperation memorandum that includes electric vehicles and renewable energy, which she described as, quote, "sectors where China has already been operating on the technological frontier for some time, and is sharing the new frontiers of knowledge with partners," end quote. Meanwhile, in a somewhat embarrassing development for Beijing, which has likely undermined trust between the EU and China, the EU and the EU High Representative Josep Borrell have both published statements in Chinese refuting an official Chinese statement about the meeting between Joseph Borrell and China's top diplomat Wang Yi last week on the sidelines of the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Regional Forum in Laos. The Europeans must have been especially unhappy with the Chinese readout to make the diplomatically tense move. The problematic language was about Palestine, with the Chinese readout expressing that the Europeans, quote, "congratulates China for promoting the reconciliation of Palestinian factions," end quote. The European Union Foreign Policy Chief Borrell said he had not congratulated Beijing on its efforts, expressing, quote, "I didn't use the word congratulate. I said that overcoming the divisions, as my statement says, overcoming the division between the Palestinians is something that has to happen," end quote. The other piece of problematic language from the readout was about Ukraine. The Chinese readout expressed, quote, "the EU attaches importance to the peace initiative of China and Brazil on the political settlement of the Ukraine crisis," end quote. However, according to the official EU statement in response, quote, "EU High Representative Josep Borrell actually said that the EU and China needs to acknowledge their respective concerns. Those are first of all China's support to Russia's war of aggression against Ukraine, which impacts negatively EU-China relations," end quote. Next up, in a positive sign that tensions between the PRC and the Philippines in the South China Sea around Second Thomas Shoal may have stopped escalating, for now, over the weekend the Philippines conducted a resupply mission of the grounded Sierra Madre at Second Thomas Shoal, the first successful resupply attempt since the violent clash back in June. Regular viewers will remember that the two countries recently announced a deal to manage these resupply missions, but there was a conflict in key details in the language, with the PRC side saying that, quote, "after confirming on site that the Philippine vessel carries only humanitarian living necessities, the Chinese side will let the vessel through," end quote, while the Philippine side says that it does not need to seek permission from the PRC for such missions. The fact that this mission was successful and went along without a clash suggests that publicly both sides are trying to save face with different language, but in private they have come to an understanding. According to a Philippine military spokesperson, Philippine vessels, a contracted civilian vessel operated by the Philippine Navy, and Philippine Coast Guard escort reached the disputed shoal without incident on the 27th of July. 9 Chinese vessels shadowed the resupply mission. This included 2 China Maritime Militia vessels, 3 People's Liberation Army Navy warships, and 4 China Coast Guard patrol boats. The spokesperson expressed, quote, "During the entire duration of the mission, the Chinese vessels maintained their distance and did not undertake any action to disrupt the resupply mission," end quote. Following the resupply mission, Beijing claimed that there were on-the-scene inspections to confirm that the Philippine vessels, quote, "carried living supplies only," end quote. The Philippines denied China's claims, with Manila releasing videos and images of the mission, and the same military spokesperson expressing, quote, "These videos further reinforce that the Philippines did not and will not seek permission from the PRC for such missions. The videos clearly show that there was no boarding or inspection by the Chinese Coast Guard, contradicting the claims made by the Chinese Foreign Ministry," end quote, and adding, quote, "Instead of acknowledging how 2 countries were able to manage differences in order to avoid miscalculation and misunderstanding, the spokesperson chose to misrepresent what had been agreed between the Philippines and China," end quote. Next up, and finally for today, the United States Department of Justice has released its response to the TikTok lawsuit. Large parts of the document have been redacted, but what is public is of itself interesting. Now just quickly, if you can get some value from today's episode of China Update, don't forget to hit the like button. Liking and subscribing is also a huge help. It is the only way in which this channel can grow and be shown to new people. Let's continue. In the document, the Justice Department alleges that TikTok collected data about its users' views on sensitive topics and censored content at the direction of its China-based parent company. It said it based its conclusions about TikTok tracking sensitive views on the discovery of a software tool that lets US employees of TikTok and ByteDance, also banned in China, to collect user information based on a user's content, including their views on subjects such as gun control, abortion, and religion. Cassie Blackburn, a senior US intelligence official writing in a filing supporting the government's position, observed, quote, "Intelligence reporting further demonstrates that ByteDance and TikTok Global have taken action in response to PRC demands to censor content outside of China," end quote. The Justice Department made the details public in court filings late Friday in response to a federal lawsuit TikTok filed in May, arguing that a new law requiring a sale or ban of the popular social media app violates the free speech rights of millions of Americans. The Justice Department filing also alleges that ByteDance used an internal web suite system called Lark, L-A-R-K, to enable TikTok employees to speak directly with ByteDance engineers in China. One of Lark's internal search tools, the filing states, permits ByteDance and TikTok employees in the United States and China to gather information on users' content or expressions. The government points to the Lark data transfers to explain why federal officials do not believe that Project Texas, TikTok's $1.5 billion mitigation plan to store US user data on servers owned and maintained by the technology giant Oracle, is sufficient to guard against national security concerns. The Justice Department argues that TikTok has not raised any valid free speech claims, saying the law addresses national security concerns without targeting protected speech, and argues that China and ByteDance, as foreign entities, are not shielded by the First Amendment. The court case will now go forward. TikTok spokesperson Alex Haurek said in a published statement that nothing in the redacted brief, quote, changes the fact that the Constitution is on our side, end quote, adding, quote, the TikTok ban would silence 170 million American voices, violating the First Amendment. As we've seen before, the government has never put forward proof of its claims, including when Congress passed this unconstitutional law. Today, once again, the government is taking this unprecedented step while hiding behind secret information. We remain confident we will prevail in court. End quote. We will continue to follow this legal battle and its implications for the wider US-China relationship as it unfolds. Okay, that is today's episode of China Update. Thank you so much everybody for watching. Have a great Tuesday, and I will see you all tomorrow.